All right. First of all, I would like to preface the discussion with a very simple statement, and that is that golf is not as difficult as you make it. And those of us who are teaching with this concept, and I'll explain to you what it is in a minute, feel that the game of golf is not as difficult as it is made. If you were trying to play baseball or any other sport with the ideas that you have in golf, you couldn't play those either. Okay? And this is an implement that's called a golf club, and when you put this implement in a human being's hand, they lose their common sense. But why is the Ernest Jones concept principles? It's now more of the dilatory because I've changed it a little bit, and I'll tell you how I changed it. Why is it so much easier to work with than some of these other things? When you do something yourself, do you know how your body moves? Do you know how it moves? Take any activity you want. If you're playing tennis, do you know how it moves?
I've got an idea how it moves, but I don't know how to...
No, exactly. Okay, you know it moves, but that's about it. Now, if you're taking the club and doing something with it, or any other implement, a pencil, a hammer, do you know what you're doing with it?
I hope so. I think I do.
Well, sure you do. I mean, if you take a hammer, you certainly see it, so you know what you're doing with it. Now, how many of you beat eggs with forks? You do. I thought you would be the one. Okay. Okay. So I get a ball and get the eggs in there, and I beat him. Now see what my hips are doing? Now try to do that and make your hand move and beat the egg. See? I mean, nothing's going to happen. Okay? People say to me, well, you've got to use the legs. Okay. But anyway, one lady ran up to me and said, you've got to show me how to get my hips into the shot to get more distance. And I said, what makes you think that the hips give you more distance? He said, well, my husband keeps telling me to get my hips in, and I read it, and I hear it all the time, and I want you to show me how to do it. So right then and there I said, now, tell you what you do. If your husband tells you that you have to get your hips in, I said, you do this to him. Let me use you. Come over here. Just stand over here. I said, you have him hold the club like this. Okay, both hands. And I said, now, move the hips as fast as you can to your left. Do so. See, the club didn't go anywhere. And you can use the legs. Still doesn't go anywhere. Why? But this is your boss. This is your boss. And when you learn to play golf, you learn to use the implement which is put in your hands, which happens to be called a golf club. Now, when you have any other implement, let's say that you go into a machine shop and you're going to learn to use a machine. What do they teach you? Anybody?
How to operate the machine?
That's correct. So you didn't tell me how to work your elbows to push the finger and push the button. See, they teach you how to operate the machine. Anytime that they give you any tool, they teach you how to work what? The tool. And nobody tells you that your head has to be this way, or the elbow has to be this way, your knee has to be this way. They tell you what to do with the machine, or with the tool, whatever. That's the basic difference in the Ernest Jones concepts. We are trying to get you to use the golf club correctly. And we personally don't care what your body does as long as it fits the motion which you are producing with a golf club. And your body motion and your body motion and your body motion will never be the same. But your motion of the club can and must be the same. Because whether you're using a golf club to play your shot or your shot, you must do exactly the same thing with it, both of you. But I'll guarantee you, you watch the tour players, how many of them have the same body motions? Very few.
So, in golf, when a human being strikes a golf ball with a full motion swing, what is actually happening is remarkably different than what appears to be happening. In the current paradigm, the theory of what's happening when a human being strikes a golf ball is as follows. It appears that elite golfers are moving their bodies through a series of complex movements and positions that they've burned into muscle memory through countless hours of practice. they then execute these movements on the golf course by way of biomechanical swing thoughts. If they're done in a biomechanically correct fashion, these movements and positions create the proper movements of the club head with regard to its pacing and speed, the swing's path, the angle of approach, the face position and impact, thereby producing powerfully struck and directionally accurate shots. In short, the old paradigm says the biomechanical movements of the body create the swinging of the club. I believe that what is really happening is actually quite different than what appears to be happening. In the new paradigm, what is actually happening is this. Elite golfers focus their minds and intentions on the shot shape that they desire to get the ball to their intended target. Now, Rose didn't quite understand this because the golfing culture says that good players create their swing with all of the different movements and positions that their bodies go through. So he's confused, and he questions Rory. He says, well, so let's say you want to hit the ball 50 yards farther with your drive. You don't try to turn your hips faster? Rory said, no, I've never thought about my hips. The old paradigm says, because it's all about angles and positions and body parts and so on, every single part has to move with precision. And then any time the ball is struck improperly or the face is out of square at impact, well, there's got to be some part of the biomechanical machine that broke down. So then we have to guess that our head's moving fractions of inches or our hips spun just a little too fast. But none of these things have actually been the real problem. So what's really going on with really good golfers is they're simply attentive to and focused on what do I do with my instrument here? What do I do with the head of the golf club to get the ball to do what I want? So let's say, for example, I want to hit a low shot. Well, my brain will instruct my body to get the club to be leaned more so that the club face is going to be lofted at the point of impact. Now, I didn't have to think about what to do with my body parts because they did what was necessary to get the club to be more leaned at impact. You see, the body can only obey the instructions that it's receiving from the brain. So when you're striking a golf ball, if your brain is thinking, okay, so spine stays straight, arms stay straight, okay, rotate around spine angle, keep my head still, keep my spine tipped over, well, that's all well and good, but the problem is your attention is now not on the actual task. The actual task in golf is to swing a club and strike a motionless ball. So the thing that's really sad for me is that every day I walk up and down the range, like the other night, I had this, I came across this husband, wife, and 2 young children. There was a boy who was left-handed. I got my lefty club here. I think he was about 11 years old. He had on the orange Ricky Fowler shirt and the orange Ricky Fowler cap. He's got this gorgeous left-handed, oops, I changed that one. He's got this gorgeous I'm not left-handed, you know. He's got this gorgeous left-handed swing. He's hitting beautiful shots. And one hitting stall down is this poor mother being told by her husband, okay, so make sure you keep your spine tilted. Make sure that arm stays straight. Now you turn your shoulders around your spine and then keep that wrist in this position and then move your hips to create the momentum of the downswing. And so I asked the young boy, so I noticed you're striking the ball quite nicely. What are you thinking about? He said, nothing. So he's a Canadian kid, so he plays a lot of hockey, so of course there's the hockey slap shots and all that. So he's got some sense of using a stick to do something with an object, a puck, for example. So he was just simply swinging the club and just hitting the ball like hitting a slap shot in hockey. Then when I asked his mother what she was thinking about, of course, there's all kinds of different body part do's and don'ts that she's thinking about. So it's so sad for me to see people going up and down the range trying to help each other, and unfortunately it's based on an old paradigm that has always been a false idea.
That's it. Now, in teaching golf, I'm afraid we've drifted away from the instinct of the game into a method. We've rather taught people that unless they do a certain series of movements, they can't make an impact with the ball. Well, it isn't true, of course.
That's the bit that interests me, is what the club head is doing. Now, one of the difficulties with golf is that we have a stationary ball. It allows us too much time to think what we're going to do. And so it's very easy to get obsessed with your arms and your legs and your body. If we think about tennis, what we're doing with this is moving the racket. I'm trying to move that racket head, and the racket head moves me. I've lined up my hand and the racket head, and I move the racket, and that moves my body. If we think about using a knife and fork, what we're doing is moving the knife and fork, and the knife and fork moves our bodies. So if I think of eating some food, what I'm doing is I'm using my fork and I'm using my knife, and I concentrate on them, and they move me. You don't have to think to yourself, now, if I'm going to eat this food, I've got to lift this arm, move it out, bend the wrist, and at the same time think of this arm doing this. You don't concentrate on your body, you concentrate on the implements, and they move you. Now, that's how you need to get with a golf club. You need to understand that the movement of the club should really move your body. Your body moves in sympathy with the club.
Everybody in golf, including almost every golf instructor in the world, and definitely every average golfer in the world, will start saying stuff like, oh, you sculled it, you topped it. Well, some part of you, the biomechanical human golfing machine that has to get all the biomechanical parts exactly correctly, some part of you broke down. So since you sculled it or topped it, well, this means that either your knees are straightening, or your head is lifting, or your arm is bending. So if you just kept your knees bent, your arms straight, your head down, and your eye in the ball, this will fix everything. And the fancy way they say this on television is, he came up and out of that one. So this is the premise on which golf is taught, that you have to pay close attention to all of your body parts and make sure they're all doing the right things, and anytime you strike the ball improperly, obviously some body part somewhere has to be blamed. So this premise has always been false. It's never been correct. How do I know? Well, for those of you who believe in this particular notion that the swing is all about mechanics and positioning and so on, you have to answer these two questions. What's the measurement? And can I meet the tolerances? Let's start with what's the measurement. So let's say you're out on the golf course and you make a swing and you scull it and it goes screaming low along the ground like that. Your golfing friends will say, oh, you came up and out of it. Or the most common one is, you lifted your head. So you turn to that person and you say, oh, lifted my head, did I? What's the measurement? Now just pause and wait for comical effect and watch their astounded facial expressions, because they've never thought about the question, what's the measurement? In fact, you might be puzzled right now going, what do you mean, what's the measurement? The question, what's the measurement, is, if I lifted my head, how much did I lift my head? Was it 2 feet? Was it 2 millimeters? 5 inches? What's the measurement? If you do a little math, if you look at a golf ball from the top to the bottom of it, that's 1.5 inches. So if we scull it, that would mean that the club's path would have been inaccurate on its journey by approximately 3/4 of an inch, which would mean that the head would have lifted, ooh, was that too much? It felt like 1 inch. Let me try that again. Ooh, is that close? So your head would have lifted this tiny fraction of an inch if it was your head. Now what's that going to amount to in terms of spine angle changes? A lot of people are always nattering endlessly about spine angles. So if my head lifts 3/4 of an inch, what does that amount to in spine angle change? Would we be able to measure it with a single degree, or would we have to measure it in the minutes, which are the 60 individual parts of a single degree when we're trying to measure angles smaller than a single degree? That's interesting. So, do you really believe while you're swinging, and every part of you is being moved and forcefully tugged around by the forces of a swinging golf club, do you really believe that you're going to detect that your head's moving by fractions of inches, or that your spine angle is changing by fractions of a single degree? If you can answer yes, you can go right ahead and continue trying to hit a golf ball by trying to tell all your body parts how to behave from a biomechanical standpoint. So that's our first question that disproves this whole notion that striking a golf ball is an exercise in swing biomechanics. The second question, what's the tolerance? So, do you really feel that you can meet a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch tolerance with all the positions and movements of your body? If you do, go right ahead and continue to believe that striking golf ball is an exercise in trying to get all the right swing biomechanics. So, if those two questions are not enough to disprove this whole notion that the body parts are really important, you have to pay close attention to them, get the grip right, the setup right, the posture right, and everything, then I just have 4 words for people who believe that. Jim Furyk, Bubba Watson. The paradigm that I'm going to talk about in my next video is that the reality is that human beings hit golf balls because they're amazing, and with simple human hand-eye coordination skill, anybody can learn how to swing a club and hit a golf ball. Intrigued? Stay tuned. I'll see you next time.